Today I'm going to tell you all which Peter Pan attraction I think is the best, but rather than just tell you why, I'm going to show you. There are 5 attractions to cover, so make sure that lap bar is secure, and here we go! When it comes to the queue, Disney World is the clear winner because it actually has a themed queue. Beyond the great theming, there's some show sequences along with some interactive elements. A feature I really like in the boarding area at Disneyland and Disneyland Paris is that little spot of rooftops that you go over before the attraction truly starts. Paris gets a little bit of an edge though because they have smoke coming out of one of the stacks. When looking at the first scene, the nursery, all of them are fairly similar, but Disneyland Paris has the edge. I really like how they have the addition of Nana with her tail wagging hitting the blocks. They have the shadow of Peter Pan, which is animated unlike at Disney World, and they also have Tinkerbell, but this time she has the pixie dust trailing, which is unique to Paris. Shanghai doesn't have either of these effects. I also like that their windows have clear panes, which is only seen here and Shanghai. In the scene where you fly over London, Tokyo is the clear winner for me. When you fly out the window, you see Nana below with the silhouettes of the children flying around her. The only comparable scene to this is the one at Shanghai with Nana waving as she begins to float. Tokyo and Walt Disney World have you flying over London at a lower altitude. This allows you to see more depth and detail in the model below. The clouds around London at Tokyo also have more dimension as they're kind of puffy instead of just being flat cutouts. When you come up to exiting the scene, I really enjoy how Tokyo's second star to the right has the rainbow effect with the fiber optics. It definitely one-ups the moon and the other attractions that just have the flat stars, and I find it more charming and aesthetically pleasing than the animated versions. In the Neverland scene, I believe Disneyland takes the cake. This was definitely one of the tougher areas to judge. Right off the bat, Tokyo and Walt Disney World were not taking the win here. At Disney World, instead of flying above Neverland, you're more flying through it, which feels less exciting to me. Though in Tokyo, you are still flying in the air through the starry night, the model itself is smaller and much less detailed. Shanghai is taking 3rd place because though its miniature looks great, the mountains still look a little off with how smooth they are, and the water isn't enhanced with the projections that Disneyland and Paris do have. Shanghai does have the best rainbow though, as it has all 7 colors and it has some pixie dust sparkles to it. This is the one area where Disneyland is the worst. Where Disneyland edges ahead of Paris is that they have a volcano with lava dripping over the side. I also think Disneyland has a superior starry field, but that's hard to quantitate here. Something neat about Tokyo is after you pass the island, you almost sort of get to do a fly-through like you do at Disney World. You see many of the same scenes, but this time they're kind of floating out in space, and seem completely disconnected from Neverland itself. So I guess Tokyo gets a few points here, but nothing too much. The next part I want to talk about is more of a transition into another scene, except for at Shanghai, so naturally Shanghai gets the points here. This is the point where the ride vehicle approaches Skull Rock before the climactic ending at the ship. At Shanghai, there's a whole new scene that takes place within Skull Rock. It's a great addition and really sets up the final battle. For the battle on the Jolly Roger, I have to give Shanghai the win again. It's not perfect though. One downside is it doesn't have the passed out pirates like it does at Disney World and Tokyo. Another unfortunate omission is that the pirate ship no longer gets sprinkled with pixie dust, a feature that is also not found at Walt Disney World. Paris currently has the best pixie dust effects. Then I'll give it to Tokyo, and then Disneyland. Disneyland used to have fiber optic effects, but now it uses projections, and it's just not as good. Now, this might be somewhat controversial, but hear me out. I find the fight between Captain Hook and Peter Pan much better at Shanghai with the projections than I do at the other parks. Though the other parks have physical figures, they're quite static. They are nice to have, but I really enjoy the battle sequence that Shanghai has. It starts off at the bow of the ship and moves to the mast. I really love the aesthetics of the silhouette fight behind the sail. This sequence was quite engaging, a lot of fun, and it even got a laugh out of me. As the attraction wraps up and comes to an end, Disney World is probably the most lackluster. They have a painting of the Jolly Roger flying off into the night. It also has a few twinkling lights helping enhance the experience. Yes, it's nice, but then we got this one. The Jolly Roger is once again flying in the sky, but this time it has a trail of lights. It's 3-dimensional, and you got a lovely scenes with mermaids and waterfalls. You get the same at Paris, but everything seems to be a little bit plussed, particularly the trail of pixie dust behind it, as well as the reflection in the water. Now at Shanghai, they pretty much made another scene. You pass by some pretty well articulated animatronics of the Darling family with Peter Pan. Then after getting generously covered in pixie dust, you follow the Jolly Roger back to London. Yes, the Jolly Roger is just a projection, but this whole sequence that has been added creates a more conducive ending for the attraction. Tokyo unfortunately just ends with Captain Hook being in the jaws of TikTok. But when you get to the unload area, you get a good close-up of TikTok, so naturally Tokyo wins this section of the attraction. Now that I've built up my case on which attractions have the best scenes or sequences or effects, now it is time to come to the conclusion on which Peter Pan attraction is the best. For me, I'm gonna go ahead and say Shanghai Disneyland. They definitely don't always have the best scene, but they do have some of the best scenes, and they also have some added quantity. So they will be my overall best of show. For second place, I'm going to put Disneyland Paris. They almost matched Disneyland in every way, and in a few cases exceeded. Naturally, Disneyland will come third. With the best Neverland sequence and the enhanced effects, it easily outperforms the next two attractions. Tokyo edges ahead of Disney World because they have the sequence where they fly over Neverland. And even though they're a little disjointed, you still see some of the sequences that Disney World has when flying through Neverland. Tokyo also has some additional effects, such as the second star to the right, as well as the Jolly Roger being sprinkled with pixie dust. Naturally, these are just my thoughts and opinions of the matter. I would like to hear yours. Please let me know your personal rankings in the comments. If I can ask you a favor, I'd greatly appreciate it if you like this video and potentially subscribe to my channel. If you enjoyed these comparisons, you should check out the comparisons between the two Indiana Jones adventure attractions. I also have a good bunch of other comparison videos you should check out. Have a good one, and until next time.